Welcome to Her Success Matters, a podcast exploring how advisors can work together to build a pathway for women to succeed in financial services. I am your host, Christine Shaw, Chief Executive Officer of Investment News. This podcast will give you rare insider access to the top financial services executives who are taking action to break down the barriers for the next generation of female advisors. You will also hear from some amazing and inspiring women who have forged their own pathway to success. Welcome to Her Success Matters. For today's episode, we are joined by Heather Ettinger, a total female powerhouse in the financial advisory community. Heather is the founder and CEO at Luma Wealth and managing partner at Fairpoint Wealth. She's a 30-year industry veteran that has dedicated her career to helping women build their wealth. In fact, Heather has recently released a new book entitled Illumination, Shining a Light on a Woman's Journey to Financial Wellness. Congratulations, Heather, on the publishing of your book, and welcome to Her Success Matters.
Thank you, Christine. I am thrilled to be here. I've been following the podcast, I think since inception, and just honored to hopefully share some wisdom as your other presenters have as well.
Well, I have no doubt you will be sharing a lot of wisdom, and I cannot wait to read your book. I must confess I haven't yet, but I am absolutely going to do that. It's such an important topic, women's health, wealth, and financial journey as well. So I'm glad you wrote that book and look forward to diving into a copy. So let's start at the very beginning, and let's talk, Heather, about your story, the why around you became a financial advisor and your background.
Well, it all started back in 1963 when my dad founded Rolston and Company. And literally I was 2 years old. So I was brought up in the business, did a couple different internships, both at that company and then fortunately also overseas with Baring Brothers and Bourdieu in Geneva. When I graduated from college, I decided that I wanted to be an equity trader in Boston.
Wow, that's very specific. I love it. And I'm from Boston, by the way. So
it was very specific, and you will appreciate this, Christine. So it was for three reasons. Number one is I wanted a major financial city. Number two was I needed it to be a city where my dad had no connections so that I could establish my own reputation. And number three, I'm an ice hockey player. Back in the early 80s, there were not a lot of cities where I could go play ice hockey. Started out as an equity trader at Jefferies and Company, which was just an amazing experience. Learned a lot about what really moves the financial markets. And then fortunately had a great deal of success and had headhunters after me. Ironically, that's what brought me back to Cleveland, joining at the time what was Rolston and Company. My dad and I had an agreement that he would never ask me to come back. He honored that. I will say one of my brothers did not honor it at all and kept telling me I really should come back and join the business. So I did. And I joined the family business, which at the time was both selling research to institutions around the world and predominantly value companies, Midwest-based companies and industries. And then they were also managing assets as well. I served in both roles. I became sales manager. But when I had our first daughter, I really took a step back and said, I don't really enjoy the equity sales side of the business. There's an immediacy to it. And as long as I continue to do that business along with the investment management and planning relationship side of the business, that relationship side will always be the stepchild because I just don't have enough time to dedicate to it. So it was at that point, coming back from maternity leave, that I chose to just focus on the advice business. And I did it really for three different reasons. Number one is I love educating. I think that's really what the business is about. And two others, which I think are really important. I'm ADD. And I love the fact that no 2 days are the same. You're always dealing with different client challenges and problems. It gives you a chance to be creative, and it gives you a chance to be strategic and coach them along the way. So that's really why I chose to be a financial advisor.
I love it. And, it speaks a lot to who you are as a person. One, I love your independence that I'm going to do this in a city where my dad's not known. And that speaks a lot to you establishing yourself. So really great bravery there, because that's not an easy path to take, especially if you have those connections. And I loved the story about you playing ice hockey. So as a born and bred Bostonian person, ice hockey is huge in the Northeast. And I can remember as a little girl, I would go ice skating. And one day I said, I'm going to go do ice hockey. I bought all the equipment and went out on the ice and immediately skated back. So you're my hero, because that was a whole different experience. And it's really challenging. So, wow, that's pretty something that's something to be proud of. That's incredible.
Well, I think it contributes to the fact that I've always been called a pioneer. And believe me, playing ice hockey back in the early 80s as a woman, we were pioneers.
Well, I met one other woman. Her name was Lenore, who was a CMO at a photonics and optoelectronics company. And she actually played ice hockey at MIT. So you and her are the two sole women I know from that genre that have done that. So then you skated your way to your own independence, and then you had your first child and ended up going back to the family business. So let's talk about something you mentioned is financial literacy. Tell me about why that's so important to your practice and as an advisor, and then again, how that really impacts women or resonates with women, especially in today's day and age with more women earning more income.
I'm going to take you back to kind of how I started working with women, because I think that really is, quite honestly, my why to a degree. When I came back to Cleveland, I had other family members in the business, and I thought, well, why would I work with Heather versus working with Tom? Fortunately for me, I got connected to the Women's Community Foundation, which at the time was one of the 90 women's funds in the National Network of Women's Funds. And specifically, I got connected with 3 amazing mentors who were very successful philanthropists and really giving aligned with their values. And I learned a couple things from them. Number one is that only 6% of national funding was going to programs for women and girls. And I have always loved being kind of the underdog and going after change. And I thought that's something I could get really passionate about. Number two was they told me about their own stories of not being treated well by advisors, despite the fact that they had wealth. They were, quite frankly, had some financial education themselves and were successful philanthropists, but they weren't treated well. Their advisors were condescending and they were very frustrated. And third, and most importantly, and really my why today, is that if we educate and empower women, they are the agents of social change. So when you ask why my feet hit the floor every day, that's it. Because I do know that if we educate and empower women, they are the agents of social change. So as we fast forward in the financial wellness space, what we really need to recognize in this country is that we, before COVID, had a financial wellness crisis going on. Over 70% of Americans say their largest source of stress is financial. And it's not socioeconomic. It's really at every single level. My interest in this space is the fact that we have to do something to reduce stress. And we have to think about financial wellness really almost like we think about integrated medicine. It's got to be an integrated approach. It can't be just about financial literacy. It's really about connecting the dots of our financial resources to our values and what we want in life. And that is going to make us feel like we're making better decisions. We're making healthier decisions for both ourselves and our families. So that's really why I started to focus on it.
Heather, thank you for going back and explaining your why. I think the why is so important. And from a lot of the stories I've heard, you're absolutely right. First of all, for females, having an advisor that they can relate to, feel comfortable speaking with, and feel like they're being heard and treated equal is really important. Also, yes, we have seen a lot about the financial crisis, and I do agree. It's across all classes of life and socioeconomic issues. And so being able to take together your purpose, your why, your passion, your desire to help women, and then stitching in the key parts around education and having an integrated approach, it's so spot on and relevant, especially now more than ever. And you mentioned the pandemic as well. I'm wondering what you're seeing and hearing in your own practice around what changes people are making with their financial picture, and advice are you giving now in a post, or I shouldn't say post, we're not in a post, but after going through all this hardship this year, what does that change for you and your clients?
Well, I think when we went into this, I really thought it would be recent retirees that probably would hit the panic button first. What I'm seeing, whether it's because it's now 11 months later for most of us since we've been in an office and all, is really, it does once again kind of depend on what niche or what area people are in. I'm going to first address widows. I think if you're an advisor serving widows, they are lonely. They are really, in many cases, depressed. And in that case, what our team is doing is actually reaching out as much socially as we are in terms of advice. And that's really, if you think of Maslow's hierarchy, it's really safety, then health, then belonging. And it's really giving them that sense of belonging. So we've done things like putting together cookbooks of our own recipes and sending them out, calling them. And we actually have kept our receptionist on board, and she's helping us with some of those calls. But the other big changes I've seen are, first of all, women business owners. Incredible stress on them. We really had to do a lot to help them with PPP loans and really looking at bringing coaching and other services to them to help them pivot in their businesses. And that was probably more towards the beginning, the first 3 to 6 months. Now I'm seeing, Christine, yet another development. And what that is, we have financial plans, of course, for our clients, but a lot of clients might have said, gosh, I want to retire in 10 years or whatever. Now they're coming back and saying, can you rerun the numbers and tell me what it would look like if I wanted to retire in the next 2 to 3 years?
Wow, so that's a change.
Big change. So we're seeing that. I think people are really facing a lot of fatigue. They're also facing a lot of revaluing what's important in their lives. And maybe some of the things that were bigger ticket items and they thought were important before aren't as important. And they're willing to give up some of those things to maybe enjoy life a bit more. Those are some of the different things that we're seeing out there that I think are really much more COVID related. The only other thing I really want to add is one of the things I'm really proud with Luma is that we use 3 words: learn, connect, and celebrate. And the learn is really our commitment to financial literacy and understanding the individual client and what's unique about them. The connect is, of course, connecting them with traditional resources, but there are 2 other pieces that are really important. One is connecting them with other like-minded and like-situation women. Big need for that right now. And in smaller groups, not big webcasts and things like that, a chance to do that in smaller ways. And number two is we've always connected them with additional resources to help manage the life of the family. And what I mean there is it could be anything from you need an employment attorney or you're looking at healthcare options, but it also could be you need your kid tested for learning differences or you need elder care resources. So we really try to bring those resources to her to help her manage the life of the family. And then celebrate. What I would tell you right now is we all need more joy in our lives. So really thinking carefully as advisors, how can we bring more joy and fun to our clients right now, which by the way, will help us as team members too, because we all could use it. And I think those are two things that I really want to stress is connection and then also this celebrate, bringing joy.
I love the holistic approach you are taking. And it's important to get that message out. So many people think about managing their money as that it conjures up the image of going into a retail front and you wait, you check in with the receptionist, you wait, and then you go sit in a room and you just talk numbers. And I think that not only your approach, but what this pandemic has, pardon the pun, shined a light on, is that there's a different way, and it's the human connection part of it. I loved what you talked about. I am down here in Florida right now, and I'm in a condo where there's a lot of retirees, and I can't tell you how many widows there are, and it's really lonely. And even myself, who I have a very active life, like that loneliness, I think in the pandemic really affects people's mental health. So the fact that you've retained your receptionist, you're reaching out, you're doing those check-ins is huge. And I agree 100% about the joy, because the past year has taught us really that things that maybe we thought were important maybe might not be as important, and you can adjust your plans so that you can have more of the life and you don't forget to live your life, because this has just been a crazy, crazy time in our history that none of us will ever forget. So I love the holistic approach that you're taking and how you as a woman are empathetic to those unique needs. So great work there, Heather. You should be really proud of that.
Well, thank you.
And let's talk a little bit about your book. Speaking of Illumination and shining a light on women. So tell us what prompted you to create that book, and give us a little sneak peek of what the book covers.
Sure. Needless to say, it's a favorite topic of mine, and anybody that's written a book knows that it is a ton of work. It's never as easy as you think it's going to be. And it also is a lot more vulnerable, at least for me in this case, because I share a lot of personal stories. So one of the things, Christine, I've learned over the years is that women learn best through anecdotes. And without laughing, I have to say, women do not appreciate being told what to do. It's really important that we do create that kind of framework. So what inspired me to write the book was people kept telling me our approach was different, this holistic approach, which unfortunately that word is so overused. So I'm going to use kind of integrated financial wellness as we think about integrated medicine, right? Really thinking about all the aspects of her life. The second reason I wrote the book was that, quite frankly, I think our industry is trying to tweak things to respond to the different needs of women. And what I argue for in this book is chuck it out the window and start over. We cannot just pinkify and tweak this and tweak that and now say it serves women's needs. My history of working with women for over 30 years says the process that we have is not working. And we can look at it as less than 25% of women have advisors because either they don't have time or they don't think they can find someone they trust. 80% leave meetings feeling misunderstood. The PIMCO study in 2018, where greater than 50% of the women that they interviewed said the industry does not reflect their lifestyle or services. I knew there was a need for change, and we have a process that has been resonating. The sneak peek at the book is a new framework for having a dialogue around money, but really around financial wellness that includes, first of all, removing the stigma of our industry, which typically treats money as the what. If you think about the fact that how do we talk about our companies, assets under management fees? Often one of the first questions we're asking clients is, how much do you have? Where is it? That is not the what. The what is 6 different areas of life, which are relationships, job purpose, community, health, spirituality, and play. I look at those 6 areas and we look at take you through a process of the past, the present, and then designing your future. And then the why is really starting with, what was your money journey? What were the money messages you got? How does that influence both how you view money, but also your values in general? And then the how is your financial capital, yes, but also your human capital. We have time and talent. And so how are we putting those resources towards the what, these 6 areas of life and what we want to accomplish? So it really kind of blows up what we're doing today and starts with a whole new framework that we have been using at Luma in various ways and is really resonating. And I can give it as simply as this. In our industry, if you were to ask, particularly in the wealth management side, which is the side I'm going to focus on for a moment, and you were to say, what are the different things that we do? And people will say estate planning, tax planning, investment management, asset allocation, insurance planning, et cetera. Well, that's often what we put down in front of a client and say, here are all the things we do. What do you need? And the fact of the matter is they often don't know. When you put down this other wheel with your values in the middle as your why, and the big 6 pieces on the outside in terms of life, the how being the inner circle in between them, of financial capital and human capital, and you say to them, here are the 6 different areas of your life. What are your priorities? You get an engaged woman who can easily articulate, well, now that you're putting that down in front of me, spirituality, that reminds me there's a retreat in Boulder that I want to go to every year, and I want to build that into my financial plan. And relationships, I want to focus on what I'm doing for my children in terms of paying for education and really get organized around that, et cetera. They relate to it so much better in this visual way than they do us saying, well, let's do education planning. It just doesn't resonate and make them feel as good as when they say, my family's a priority, education's a priority. Oh yeah, you guys are the technical people. Now tell me how to do it.
Heather, I love this approach and I'm obsessed with it because years ago, when I was at the beginning of my executive career path, I started working with a business coach and she used like the wheel of life. So that tool, and it wasn't about you need to do this. It's like, let's holistically, and I'm going to lose that word. I know you're replacing it. Let's take an integrated approach to your life because it doesn't all fit in like a little box necessarily, and you forget about all the other pieces of life that's important. But to your point, as when you're talking about your financial journey, then you have to factor all those other things into it because it represents who you are in every aspect of your life, not just a moment or a milestone. So I absolutely love that approach. So tell listeners, where can they find this book, just so they know where to go get it?
Sure. Well, I'm thrilled to say it's on Amazon.
Yay.
Hardback, paperback, Kindle. And I'm talking to Audible now about recording the book as well. And it's already hit Amazon bestseller status in 6 different categories. So I think I've hit a nerve that hopefully, or I should say need, that we are addressing. So again, it's for women of all ages. And it's honestly, I think, men will enjoy the book as well, but it has really been fun to talk to women that are in college, to young women in their careers, to my peers and age peers, and I think everybody will get something out of it.
Fantastic. Well, I will be getting my own copy. And again, to everyone out there, Illumination. So go to Amazon and you can buy Heather's book there. So great. I cannot wait to dive in, and hopefully we'll be together at some point in person. We can talk about it. That would be great. And then, Heather, as we sort of end out this session, I would love to hear in your voice why you believe her success matters.
Well, Christine, first of all, I want to thank you again for having me on, because I have been following the podcast, and it reminds me of an RBG quote: fight for the things you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. And I really feel that how you've created Her Success Matters has allowed women leaders to be able to talk about the need for change, to talk about having success with new models or ways of thinking and doing. And it also gives us a forum to exchange ideas, bring each other forward. And I mean that in terms of men and women, to a better way of life and work in the financial services industry, and perhaps also new ways of how we measure success. Thank you for just what has been a great opportunity, and please keep up the good work, because I learned something from your podcast as well.
Oh, that means a lot to me, Heather. And thank you for saying that. That's a fantastic compliment. As I was saying to another guest, that this started off as a way to just sort of connect. And I thought we'd do one season and that would be it. But the demand and the response has been so strong that we're going to just keep it going. And what I've realized is I've learned a lot from women like you as well, who are willing to come on, share their stories, talk about it. Then my ambition, this is to make it so it's a collective thing. It's not an anti-men thing or anything like that. It's about learning, listening, and demonstrating how we can make productive changes. And as we know, research shows that it will result in a better outcome for everyone if we stay focused on this and continue this forward. So thank you so much for sharing. Again, congrats on your book and your success. I love your integrated approach to financial planning, and I'm looking forward to it. So let's have a great, prosperous 2021. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Christine. It has been a total pleasure, and I wish you continued success as well.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Her Success Matters. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available, and share this podcast with others that believe her success matters.
The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Investment News. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service providers with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.